Welcome to Koffee Talks, a Pokemon card collecting podcast, featuring David Person, owner of the world's most complete English Pokemon card collection, and Dan Norton, a longtime collector with all the knowledge behind the cards.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Koffee Talks. Let's just say we're going to have a little bit of a low-energy podcast this week. Just me and David, and there's no guest, and me and David are both feeling it this week. Me, because I've been traveling, David, because he's 100 years old. David, how's your week been? Tell people how your week's been, and then I'll tell people how my week's been, and we'll see if it
Dan, thanks for finally admitting that I'm so much older than you, and maybe a bit wiser, but much, much more tired. I appreciate that. And thank you for putting up with me on our Koffee Talks podcast, knowing that I'm old enough to be a dead relative of yours from several generations ago. It's good to see you, buddy. I'm glad you got home safe and sound as always. I'm going to talk to you just for a second about what my good news was this week. It's not really good news. It's just news, Dan, but I got my 151 set. It's all done. It's completed. A wonderful person from Facebook named Roberto Tamez was able to build it for me, put a bunch of promos in there. So I've now, since the termination of my set person, I've received Obsidian Flames, I've received 151, and I'm working very steadily on whatever the next one is, Paradox Rift, Shift, or Grift, depending on how angry you are. And so that's that. I'm also realizing now more and more about what you used to say in the old podcasts about how the Japanese sets translate into the USA sets regarding the number of cards, promos, etc., because this set was about twice as expensive as the Obsidian Flames. So that means, of course, more chase cards and things like that. And I think that from what you've told me, Paradox Rift may even have a few more. So I'm learning about how we don't have any control. It's just the Japanese sets and how they come over. But Dan, I don't want to talk anymore about my week right now. I want to talk about what you've been doing. I want you to tell the audience about PAX Unplugged. What is it? And Dan, how does it compare to Collecticons? And how do you like it or not like it? And Dan, how does Pokemon sponsorship fit into all these different events that you're going to that aren't really Pokemon specific events? Tell us.
So PAX Unplugged is part of a convention series. Like PAX is a series, they have multiple different conventions around the US. Each year they have a West and an East, and then they have Unplugged. PAX is Penny Arcade. They're a gaming news website, comic website, I believe, based out of Washington State, I think, is where they're headed. West and East are mainly video game conventions with some occasional bit of board gaming, card gaming stuff there. They've had Pokemon Play Labs and stuff at those too, but then PAX Unplugged is a fully board game and card game. That's why it's unplugged, because it's not video game. Compared to Collecticon, obviously Collecticon is just trading cards as far as I know. I have never actually been to a Collecticon, probably not really my scene. And Collecticon and those other ones have no official link with Pokemon, but the PAX events, they do have official Pokemon events and things there. So we went because Laura was working the Play Lab. If anyone who's been to Worlds in the last couple of years or ICs will have seen the Play Lab, it's kind of a setup where they teach new players how to play the game through a few just very, very short events. You just get to go in, you get taught the very basics, you play a short game, a 3-prize game with a 30-card deck. Then on your way out, they give you one of those 30-card decks that I'm sure a lot of people have seen. They have the Umbreon, Greninja, and Lucario ones. They come with the non-foil Vs that I'm sure people have seen floating around. That's where those come from. At this one, there was also another style of Pokemon event. There was obviously a play area as well where people were playing card games. And it was Pastimes were running Pokemon tournaments. They didn't do anything big. There was no, championship points giving tournaments, but there was just pretty much all day, every couple of hours, they were the start of 3-round events. You just played 3 rounds of standard, and you got prize tickets and prize packs, depending on how well you did. And they also ran some special events where it was you could only enter with one of these 30-card decks. So if you went through the Play Lab and you got your 30-card deck, you could go over and you could play in an event where everyone was playing a similar sort of thing. Everyone only had these new starter decks, so no one was at a huge advantage by having a better deck. Going through the Play Lab, you also got a special unique pin. This time it was a Quaxley pin. The last couple have been Fuecoco and Sprigatito for the starters of this generation. There was a Pikachu and an Eevee one. So Laura missed the event that gave out Fuecoco, but we did actually she got a Fuecoco this weekend as well. She gets a couple of copies of the pins for working it, but they said anyone who didn't work the event with got Fuecoco, they actually had a couple of extras that gave those out. So I basically just spent the weekend walking around looking at board games, looking at card games. I played a bit of Lorcana, which I've talked about on here before. I'll be talking a lot more about the Lorcana side of it when I record my other podcast tomorrow with Jordan, which I'm sure people know about. But yeah, I just had a lot of fun. I hung around, chatted with a lot of people. I chatted with designers of different games. I actually got to chat to the guys from Star Wars Unlimited at Fantasy Flight, because I knew one of the head marketing people already, or one of the heads promotions I think he's in. He used to work at Pokemon, so I knew him quite well. So I chatted with him, and I got to play with the Star Wars Unlimited demo decks, which was really cool. Won't get too bogged down in that right now, because this is a Pokemon podcast, supposedly.
So wait a minute, Dan.
Yeah.
Dan, when you're playing Lorcana, whatever the heck it is, a Disney game, do you feel like you're cheating on Pokemon?
No, I don't. Mainly because I've never really played Pokemon to a competitive level. The only Pokemon I've ever played was generally pretty casual. I've played like pre-releases and stuff. Back in the day, I did play a few like city championships or battle roads, or I did the grinders if I went to Worlds, the last chance qualifier. But I never tried to seriously play Pokemon in the way that I did with Magic, or that I'm now looking into possibly doing with Lorcana.
Dan, you're on your deathbed right now, and somebody says you need to let the world know what your real favorite hobby was. Everybody needs to know the truth. Is it Pokemon or Lorcana? Which one, Dan?
Well, it's always Pokemon. Collecting Pokemon is always the main hobby. That's always the best one.
Okay, don't get brainwashed in that Disney stuff, because they got a whole channel out there like Disney Plus. There's a Mickey Mouse guy. They'll get into your head, man. It's like a bad situation. So
there is
careful.
A Mickey Mouse guy. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you know or not. So I just because sometimes it's all hidden within the game. Dan, can you put up some pictures during our podcast about like some of these 30 card decks, or some of the promos, or the Play Lab promos and stuff, since that's going to be a theme that we're dealing with today?
Always do. We've talked about Play Lab promos in the past. This Play Lab and the Play Labs at PAX don't actually have the Play Lab promos like that we've talked about before. There was the starter trio, and then there was those raid battle promos. The Penny Arcade or the PAX Play Labs don't have that. They just have the 30 card decks, and they have the pins rather than having any of the extra promo cards.
Okay. So is that going to make these Play Lab promos harder to get, since it appears they're in the past and not coming in the future?
Yeah, of the 6 of them, the starter trio are the difficult ones to get, because so far those have only appeared at the Play Lab at Worlds in London. That's the ones where I'm still missing the Score Bunny for you. I'm still trying to source that one. The other 3, which were the raid promos, they were rarer right after London, because not as many people did the raid battles, so there were very, very few. Like, that was the one where, coming out of London, Laura was the only one of the 3 of us who had a full set. I was still missing the Pikachu, and you had none of them, and I was trying for a while, and I was getting 3-figure offers on Laura's Pikachu from that. But then they've pretty recently started sending those 3 out to leagues, so a lot of leagues around the US are getting those so that they can actually run raid battles at leagues. So those 3 are a bit easier to get a hold of now, but the starter trio is still difficult to find.
Okay.
And the 30 card decks are everywhere. You can get 30 card decks easy. There's so many of those in circulation now.
And are the 30 card decks, are the cards in the decks any different than regular cards that come from sets?
There's a couple. So each one has a non-foil V is the main card. That's the main variant in them. And then each one I think has one. I think one of them has another non-foil variant of a rare that would normally be foil. And then the Umbreon one also has an it's an Obstagoon, which is a Black Star promo, which previously only came in Battle Academy. So in Battle Academy, it had like an Eevee symbol on it, and in the Umbreon deck, it doesn't have the Eevee symbol. So there's a couple of exclusive cards in there, but they're not all exclusive.
Dan, are you going to pick those up? Because when you say I think, it doesn't give me confidence, Dan. I need you to say I know, and I've got the decks, and I've got these variants picked up, and I'm all set, and they're packed away for our future and the future of our children. Is that done yet, Dan?
Yeah, it's done. I was just trying to remember off the top of my head which ones were actually in the decks. But yes, we've got our sets. I've got you a set. I've got you all the variants, and I've got you a set of the decks sealed as well. So you have that as well.
Thank you, Dan. I'd love to sleep better tonight just hearing that. I think it's time, and I know it's time to move right into comments. Does that sound like a thing?
Yep, I hope you've got some picked out. We'll jump right into comments.
Okay.
Let's take a look at your comments.
Alright, so comments last week. Obviously, last week was the episode where Rusty very kindly joined us, so the majority of comments were just talking about how cool Rusty was, which I don't blame people. Rusty's awesome. Everyone knows that Rusty is awesome. Dave, did you have a few comments that you wanted to pick out and read, or anything you got in on Instagram personally? Just let us know what you want to say on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely. I mean, we had so many positive reviews, and that's really the mark of somebody who's a positive, influence on the hobby and an icon, and all the things that we always say regarding Rusty and his perspective, his humility, his transparency, all those things that everybody could see just in the matter of an hour and a half interview. I thought it was funny that even Rusty made it clear he does not hide behind a Patreon wall, like the head of a E4 forum we've been talking about the past few weeks.
Somehow we managed to talk about it again.
I definitely want to throw it in. I do think it's important. I think that, people need my theme of doing this, other than helping you, Dan, is to let every one of our viewers understand the importance of not being a follower, right? I say it every single time over and over again. Be a leader. Don't be a follower. Create your own opinions. Look at things from both sides. And I think that's one of the things that was so interesting from Rusty's interview is he talked about things from a multitude of different perspectives and how he didn't just come at things from one angle. And then he also put into perspective the idea that Pokemon is just a hobby. It's just cardboard. And so family and friends and stories and time spent, with family and those kinds of things are clearly as important, if not more than everything else. So, but I'm glad that you guys were positive on it. And, Dan has made several promises to get guests on the podcast. Nobody seems to want to do a podcast with Dan. I'm not sure if it's because of Dan or because I'm on with Dan. Maybe you guys can let us know. I know Nostalgia Mnemonics, Nostalgianomics. Who would come up with a name like that? It's such a good name, but it's not. How can you say it like Nostalgianomics? Try that fast. 3 times fast. Nostalgianomics, Nostalgianomics, Nostalgianomics. You got to be able to talk. So I think he's going to come on at some point because Dan owed him a favor, or he owed Dan a favor.
We definitely owed him for showing this podcast to his audience. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. We owe everybody. There's no question about that. So, and anybody else? Oh, okay. Well, let me say something else since we said that. I'll just move on to another comment. So the old card shop, whose name is Joshua Archibald, he invited me/us. I like to think of it as me just in case, because I don't know, is Dan as interesting as me? Sure he is. Better looking than me? Of course. Younger? Absolutely. More historically inclined? Yes. And yet Joshua Archibald, the old card shop, just pretty much invited me and Dan on his podcast, and even to experience the wineries of Napa, California. He said, come on out. I know that stuff. And I looked at his Instagram page, and I realized that because he's got cats and hats, like Cat in the Hats on there, lots of that stuff, I definitely am going to go on his podcast. So thanks, old card shop, for wanting to get an old guy like me on your podcast. Dan and I are going to join you, or else it'll just be me.
It's a lot easier
but what do you want to say?
I'm just saying it's a lot easier for you to go and join someone in California than it is for me to go and join someone in California.
Not really, Dan, because if there's some kind of situation where your wife is working, you can seem to get to anywhere you need to get. Pittsburgh, Toronto, Paris, France. Dan, no more. Let's start making your part of this podcast more real, okay?
Paris was because we were flying out to Europe anyway for my brother's wedding, and then all the rest of those things you said were either East Coast US or Toronto, which is just over the border. I think Toronto was less of a drive than Pittsburgh, but...
That's fine, Dan. Yeah. If that makes you feel good, then I feel good for you, buddy. Great. Good justification.
I cannot drive to California.
All right.
That I will say. I'll put that on record. I'm not driving from Ohio to California.
Well, you know what? If you do, maybe Laura will actually put a comment in one of the videos because she'll have time to listen to one when she's in the car like the good old days. Okay,
She
I'm going to
wanted to.
tell what?
We drove to Pennsylvania we drove to Philadelphia for PAX, and she wanted to listen to this and my Quest for 20 podcast in the car, and I said no. I said I cannot listen to myself again. I said I
You know
can't do
what,
it.
Dan?
She
What I love
listens
about
to
that. What?
she does listen to the podcast. I just won't let her listen to them when I'm around.
Dan, your audience can't listen to you anymore, so they understand completely. Please, it
Yeah,
makes
that's right.
complete sense.
That is fair.
All right, I'm going to do another comment. So, of course, we're not going to list out all the things that Dan said about all the positive comments that we had about Dan's last E4 related podcast. A lot of positivity. A lot
That
of folks
wasn't
love
even
to
the
hear the
last
story,
podcast.
and the fact that Dan took his time and addressed every single statement from line in the statement from E4 was really cool. But everything's been positive. We're really hyped about it. So thank you for all that. I'm going to talk about another comment we got from Stephen Kassoon, the one and only, who said, "For the next podcast, I have a question of the mild philosophical variety. Does anyone have an end game for collecting? Do we at some point say we have enough? We've collected enough, or are we satisfied to say we're engaged in a never-ending hobby?" So Dan and I have addressed a little bit of this before, but I really thought it was interesting because before I went to finish up my preparation for today's video, I looked up Pokemon in the news and found an article back from February. And the February article was titled this: "Dad who spent years collecting Pokemon cards for his kids will now make 250K. Only Dan knows what the L means before it. It could be Euro, Great British Pounds. Nobody knows what that L thing is, okay? But the point is that this gentleman said he was going to sell all his stuff. He'd been collecting since '99, and he was going to create a great windfall for his family for their future. And here's what he said in a quote. He said, "For me, the fun is the completing, not the collecting. And as far as I'm concerned, I've completed it, so it's time to pass it all on." So what I'm interested in, Dan, your thoughts on Stephen's question. We're both try to be completionists, and people wouldn't think of us as really selling anything. But there's so many people who have thought about it, and even Rusty talked about it in the last podcast, this concept of things go up so much in value, or you actually do complete them, and then they begin to get sold off, either due to financial need or financial desire, or just because somebody really did complete a goal. It's interesting how many times I buy these complete sets from the Facebook folks, and I'm like, why would they build a set and just go sell it? And they're like, because I collected it and now I want to sell it. So what are your thoughts, Dan?
Well, first I should say I do know the article you were talking about, because I did actually buy some cards from that collection when it was sold back in February.
Okay.
And because I actually know the guy who sold it, because I used to play at his league back when I played in Scotland about a decade ago. He ran one of the leagues up in Scotland that I played at. And he sold it on a weird UK only auction house. So some of the lots went very, very cheap compared to what they would have gone for if they were all on eBay. So I got some very nice deals from that lot. In terms of Steven's question, for Pokemon, I guess I don't really have an end game goal in mind. I set smaller goals every now and then. I'll say I want to finish this set, or I want to finish this subset of cards, or I want to get all the promos from this, something like that. But I'm aware that Pokemon for me is basically always going to be an ongoing thing, that I'm never finished or never satisfied with the collection. That's partially why I do dabble in other games too, especially in collecting dead CCGs, games that have completely finished, games that are no longer in production, because with those, I know that there is the chance that, I'm going to finish it, I can be done, I can hit the end goal with that game. And I think I've done it with a couple of games now where I own one of every card ever printed for a game. Obviously it costs some of these games you can get every card ever printed for less than one set of Pokemon cards, but with a lot of those games, it's more the difficulty is in chasing the cards down rather than in actually paying them money. I mean, with a lot of modern Pokemon, like I know we're going into at your level, there is a lot of chasing stuff down, like especially with these Asian promos and stuff that we've been looking at, the English language Asian tournament promos. The difficulty there has been trying to make those contacts and find those. But for the vast, vast majority of Pokemon, the problem is having enough money. It's not about the chase. I mean, even if you're looking at stuff like first edition WotC stuff, it's all out there. You just have to have the money for it. There's very, very few English Pokemon cards where you can't buy them if you have the money for them. Whereas with Dead CCGs, I like that. It's like when I find this card, it's going to cost me $10, but it's the difficulty of finding it, which I really enjoy, and I think I'm just getting off topic and rambling now. But as I said, yeah, I like those because I can hit that end goal. But Pokemon, there is no end goal because I know I'm never going to own everything. Because even if I had the money that David had, and even if I had, like, even if my collection was where David's is at now, I know from helping David, it's not as simple as just I'm going to buy everything as it comes out. Because there are those one or two random promos that, like I said, I'm enjoying the chase. Like, I'm living vicariously through David on an end goal of Pokemon, because my end goal, I guess, would have been everything, but I know I'm never going to achieve that. So, for the idea of a Pokemon end goal, I like helping David fill out the gaps that he's missing with these valuable and hard-to-find cards. So, that's where I am with Pokemon. But it is never ending. I think I've just said the same thing about 5 times. My head is genuinely baffled. By the way, they tried to take platelets from me today and failed to stab me in the arm a bunch of times. That's what's going on there. Yeah, I hope that answered the question. Maybe it did. Maybe I didn't answer it. Maybe I answered it 10 times.
Well, whether or not you answered the question or not, this is a really important moment for us to just stop and do a public service announcement. A lot of you guys know that you should never drive drunk, obviously, and you should never drive high. Also, I think that Dan has just demonstrated the importance of never driving tired. And this is what happens, okay? Your mind wanders, it meanders. You try to open the window to get some cold air on your face or put the radio up as high as possible. And it doesn't matter when you're as disastrously exhausted as Dan is right now. It doesn't make for good podcast fodder. So, but I really appreciate Dan trying to get us an answer. And in the meantime, I'm going to just tag on to that with some important information that's not important at all, but something that might make a bit more sense. And that is, I happen to know that Stephen Kissoon actually just collects Gem Mint cards. So that's even tougher to collect, right? And I don't know exactly where that extends to. Is it sets or just high value, whatever? So, but when I think about Rusty's comment last week about he was collecting something and then he thought, well, hey, I'm going to do something with that money. I'm going to sell something that was part of my so-called collection and help my family enjoy their life more. That's the variability of flexibility of your life and making changes and when your collection goals change. So, when Stephen asked the question, really the idea is we've always talked about everybody's collection is unique to them. And what if I have in my collection right now one sealed booster box of everything that's ever been made, along with my sets and my promos and everything else? Well, maybe I then redefine my collection, right? And I say, hey, I'm going to sell these boxes because I'm going to go to retirement, need some capital. And so once the boxes are sold, now it's just a one of every card. So you can also redefine your collection along the way. But I think it's different for everybody else. I think most people would say, honestly, I think Dan and I tend to be more of the exception than the rule as far as not really having sold anything from our collections. And most people will reinvent the collections over time due to their changing needs, changing desires, and changing financial situations, et cetera, especially when much more money is involved in the hobby as it is today.
Yeah, I feel like if I was going to do that of redefining my collections or selling stuff, it would have been at the height of the pandemic. I would have sold my trophy cards I think at that point it was a huge decision for me as to, do I want to keep these? Because obviously as I'm sure people who watch this know, I have a number 1 through number 4 trainer. They're from different years, but they're all the original half arts. And obviously when I bought them, and I'll say the price I paid total for 4 cards was $12,000. I got them over a few years. Even getting towards the start of the pandemic, I probably couldn't have sold the set for more than $25,000. During, obviously, the height of the pandemic, everything explodes. And there was a number 2 trainer, half art, sold for over about $110,000, I think, early on in the pandemic. At that point, it was no longer oh, if I sell these 4 cards, we could maybe pay off our car or something. It was, oh, if I sell these 4 cards, I pay off our mortgage, I pay off our car, I pay off literally every outstanding debt that we have, and we have a lot of money left over. And I think that was the turning point for me, where I really had to decide, do I want to do this, or am I okay with us being in the situation where, because it's not like we can't afford the bills. It's not like we're struggling every month to drag money together. As I've said, Laura makes enough money to cover the bills, and I do this. So it was a decision, and I decided to keep the cards. And Laura, being a collector herself, was fully on board with that. She fully supported me in it. But I feel like if I was ever going to do it, I feel like that would have been the moment that I would have done it, because I think that is where I would have most benefited from it. I think that would have been where it was actually, that got to the point where selling my collection would have been actually life-changing. I'm not even selling my collection, selling those 4 cards from my collection would have been life-changing in terms of what we could do, just for financial stability and everything. But we didn't, or I didn't, and yeah, that's where I would have done it. I think because I was able to stick to it and stick with them through that, I think I don't see myself ever getting rid of it because of that.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting, Dan, is it's easy to say that, and I'm not doubting what you're saying, and it's certainly on a theoretical basis, what you said makes complete sense. The problem is nobody has a crystal ball. So, when somebody sold in that same time frame a first edition booster box, or maybe came to me and said, I could buy yours for $350 or $400,000 or something, nobody thought, if people thought if that was the booster box and that was a limited first edition and that's where it was, that why would it come down? Why would it necessarily be half that price 2 years later? So, and that's what it is. It's $200,000 now for a similar box. So it's easy to kind of say, but I wouldn't have thought that box was going to fall by 50% when we wake up 2 years later. And I also think later on it'll be back to where it was. It's just a matter of waiting for time. But it's hard to say, well, I would have done something, in a sense that I knew, because there's no crystal ball to when markets are up or when they're at their high, when they're at their low, whatever. But so don't beat yourself up, buddy.
I don't even mean
you're not going to sell it anyways.
Yeah, I don't mean about markets or anything. It is just purely that amount of money. Even if it was going to be worth double later, having that amount of money then would have still changed our lives, because, like I said, it would have covered everything. It would have covered the full mortgage, the car, the solar panels, everything we had. It would have put us in a very, very good financial place. But I decided to stick with the collection on that. And like I say, it's not about values of cards or future values. It is fully about just holding on to the collection and wanting it as the collection. And when I say I don't see myself ever selling it because of that, obviously I'm meaning that if I have the option, really. If we ever get to a point where, maybe if Laura loses her job or anything, or we hit very bad medical issues, and I need to sell them, like we need the money to live, obviously that changes things. But at the time, because we were still paying the bills, we still had the money coming in to at least cover the bills. It still felt like a choice. It felt like this is a choice I can make. It feels like if I choose to keep the cards, it's not as though I'm like screwing up our family or anything. So
yeah, I don't know if Laura feels the same way, Dan, but I appreciate the diatribe. I mean, I think that in the end, you're gonna have to sell something just to prove to Laura that you're actually financially committed to the relationship, or hang on to her for dear life, because I don't really, right now that's what you got going. Dan, we're gonna move into the drawing winner here in a second, but I do want to say shout out to the folks that shared our podcast in your stories. We are so grateful, so appreciative. I have Maximilian Pegasus Jr., Berkey Sexclusive by Drex. I don't know what they do in Pokemon, but I just want to be part of their fashion line. Andrew Wu, Chris Ondo, TCGME, and Marcus Fleckner. Thank you guys for sharing our podcast. It means a lot, and I really appreciate it. And with that, Dan, I'm ready to move into the drawing winner if you're ready to do that.
Yep, we can definitely move into that.
Okay, let's do it.
So, who won last week's giveaway?
All right, so a couple of weeks ago, it was 2 episodes ago, David set up a competition to give away a card. We didn't do the drawing last week because of how close we were between that episode going up and then recording with Rusty. So we're here now, David. Have you selected a winner? Do you want to remind people what they had to do, and then it'll make maybe a bit more sense if you tell them another giveaway?
Yes, yeah. So let me do the winner first, and then I'll restate the rules for this week's giveaway,
All right.
Dan. But we had 15 participants, and I always tell you that because it's not very many. A lot of you folks think, "Gosh, there's going to be so many people, and I'll never win." But there are certain of you that will never win. I can't explain why. Sometimes Dan will tell me, "Please make sure that person never wins," and I have to do that because it's his podcast. He's the technology behind the thing. But then most of you actually have a legitimate chance, notwithstanding Stephen Kassoon. Don't text me, Stephen. I swear to God. Okay, so anyways, last week's winner on a random number generator that puts like air in. You know those ones that they do like an air thing to make sure it's legitimate or something. Was Biz Cash Cards. I know that the gentleman as Jack from Ohio. Congratulations to Biz Cash Cards. You met the requirements and you were selected with random number generator. And I'll be sending you something that you will look for in the mail unless I don't, but do continue to look for it just in case. Okay. And let me know if you don't receive it, but don't be sure you didn't receive it or I didn't send it because I probably will or won't send it. You're going to get it, I'm sure. All right. Now, here's the giveaway details for this podcast. It always works the same. It's the same thing. You got to climb into my DMs because I'm lonely. That's number one. If you don't climb into my DMs and I don't feel the warmth of your friendship, don't even bother to enter. There's going to be some necessary information you're going to have to type into my DM transmissions with you. It'll be the name of a Pokemon character and the number of a Pokemon character. Those details will be revealed later on in today's podcast. All right. Do not place the requested info in the video comments on our video because that would tell everybody the answers and you will be permanently disbarred and disqualified from participating in our giveaways ever again. Maybe not, I don't know, but I have to just talk to a judge about the actual legalities of that. And also, do leave a comment on the video. If you think you can get away with just putting something in my DMs and not putting a comment on Dan Norton's video, you are sadly mistaken. And I'm not kidding about that. And that's it. That's the whole thing, okay? So climb into my DMs, give the information once we reveal it later in the podcast. Leave a comment on the thing, but don't leave the information on the thing, the podcast, and we're ready to go. Okay. Dan, that's it. Anything else I got to say before I move into today's deal of the podcast?
No, I think that pretty much covers everything. I will say I've actually met Biz Cash Cards before. I came along to a card show that I was doing because, he lives in Ohio, so...
Hey, that's right. I forgot about that. When I said Jack from Ohio, I forgot that you actually live there because you spend 3/4 of the year traveling to Pokemon and PAX tournaments around the world on the tailgates and on the coat tails and the sleeves, the coat sleeves, the coat of your wonderful wife, Laura Norton, who's an employee of Pokemon, even though she might only be like a 1099 employee, not an actual W-2'd employee.
She's not a real employee of Pokemon. What? She's not an employee of Pokemon. She gets hired for these events by other people who are hired by Pokemon. She's very
contractor. She better, if they're not giving her a 1099 form, I need to talk to somebody about it. Somebody's doing something illegal, okay?
You don't need the form if you don't get paid in money. If you get paid in boxes of Pokemon cards, they can't tax that. The IRS can't take 3 booster packs out of every box or whatever they would.
All right, so I appreciate you saying that, and we're going to leave this for a different podcast, but that is 100% wrong. The IRS is willing to value every single thing that is given or taken in this world by anybody. So it doesn't mean they're going to come after a booster pack or whatever for their withholding. They're going to value that, and she gets it. And that's only going to be something that Pokemon's going to be able to do so long till somebody says that, because that is not legal. But that's fine if they're getting away with it.
I'll level with you, Dave. They may give her these forms. She does all the taxes. I have no clue. I'm just guessing here. It's entirely possible that she does this.
That's fine. And if they do, they don't, who cares? Whatever, that's up to them. Because I don't really care. I have nothing against Pokemon except one single thing I have against Pokemon. Dan, do you know the one thing I have against Pokemon?
Is it about the Pokemon Center?
You're the best, buddy. I appreciate it. Is that the Pokemon Center has no idea what they're doing. Okay, good. So anyways, let me move to the deal of the podcast. I had great success on the last week's deal of the podcast, which was probably 2 weeks ago. And I appreciate that. Some of you folks got in on a real nice chance to own a 2013 World Championship player promo card from the World Championships. So this is a whole different game this time. It's a little more expensive item. I don't expect as many of you to take advantage of it because you're not going to have the capital, and I understand that, but there might be a couple. So this deal of the podcast is the 2022 Pokemon World Championship sealed player promo pack. Dan will put one up on the screen. It has all of the different languages that are inside of there, which in these new years might have been actually just starting in 2022. Dan will tell us in a minute that
So.
there was 11 promo cards in this one versus just 7 in the older years in each of the following languages: English, Spanish, German, Portuguese, Italian, French, Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Indonesian, and Thai. So the first year they did that, this is from the London World Championships. And up until this last week or so, you could not find a pack of this for less than about $1,200 out the door on eBay. So I think that there might have been a couple of folks who bought a few out like I did in a wholesale situation. And so the eBay price now, right now, if you look at it, after taxes, shipping, and everything from the UK comes out to be about $900. I'm going to offer you this pack, this sealed pack, for $750, including shipping and insurance. Very limited availability. I do not have a lot of these, but I'm basically putting them out there as a reward to you guys that are watching at my cost. And I want to say a couple things. If you looked at eBay and you looked at a PSA 9, I didn't do a 10, Japanese card from that, it's $600 or more. The PSA 9 English version from there is $460 or more. Just alone, though, it's over $1,060 for those two cards before you get into the other ones. So regardless of the fact that this one is now out there in the UK for a couple people that just lowered it and put it out there, we're still much lower than that. And I think long-term it's going to be a really good deal. If you look back at the other ones, the lowest one I think that's out there right now, I'd have to think about it, but they're over 1,000. The 2019 is like $2,000 for those sealed packs now, and everything goes up from there. So take a look, see if you're interested. My requirements, as I always say, are you are going to have to let me know. You'll have to Instagram, DM me, and you'll have to pay friends and family or PayPal friends and family, or Zelle. That's the only way I will take payment for this. But if I can help you out and you'd like a sealed 2022 player promo pack, I'd be glad to do that. And it's a great purchase, and maybe you'll enjoy it too. Dan?
And you have multiples of these, right? As I
have multiples of them. Yeah. Last time there was folks that just thought I had one or something of the 2013. So I was actually able to get a few more of those out after Rusty's podcast as well. So don't be afraid to ask in case I do have something left over, but I do have multiples of this. I just don't have nearly as many of these at this price as you can imagine that as I do on the 2013 World cards that I did. Right. And with that, that's my deal of the podcast today. And I am ready to move into Trainer Deck A or B. What do you think, Dan?
Well, I'm never ready for Trainer Deck A or B, but I guess it's time for that.
Okay, let's do it.
It's time to play Trainer Deck A or Trainer Deck B.
All right, there's a bit of the podcast that I hate. I'm eating a cough sweet because I really don't care about this bit. David, go ahead and ask me some stupid either-or questions, and then we'll get on to some more Pokemon stuff.
These are not stupid either-or questions, okay? This is Trainer Deck A or Deck B, where you got to pick an option and you got to give an explanation for that option within 10 seconds. And should you decide not to give an explanation, you don't have to. But should you exceed your explanatory time, a Pokemon judge will magically appear and you'll be barred from going to the World Championships in Hawaii next August. Here we go, Dan. Sim Card or Sim City?
Sim City. That was a card game, I believe. I believe they did a card game of the Sim City.
I don't know, Dan. It was something you did on a computer. If that's what a card game is or something, knock yourself out.
Well, SimCity was a video game, but I believe they did a card game of it as well.
Sure. So if everything's a card game, it doesn't matter that you can fit the entire world and artificial intelligence in our future is going to be on a SIM card. You don't even care. Okay, yeah. Dan, city or state?
City.
Makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
Dan, state of the art or state of the gameplay?
State of the art, I guess. Something cool, something new.
Oh, that's nice, Dan. Maybe we can up our technology game for the podcast and give our audience something new. Mr. I'm going to do small reels every once in a while before I'm dead. Dan, arts or crafts?
Arts. I don't know. Similar things. There's a lot of overlap in that, but I'll go arts.
All right, Dan, do you feel like when you went to the Pokemon Museum exhibit at Van Gogh or whatever, what were you looking at? Were you looking at arts or crafts?
Art. I think looking at Van Gogh's paintings is art rather than crafts.
All right. Obviously, you have tremendous history in the study of arts, I can tell.
Obviously.
Dan, crafting your narrative or narrating your craft creation collection?
Crafting your narrative, because that second one just tail it off into nothing. You said
And Dan, if you do craft your narrative, what do you want it to be, buddy?
I don't know. I just want people to like me. That's not even
That's
true.
a great narrative.
I
think
don't
that's
even care.
actually a great answer for someone who's so tired he could barely come up with something. That's really good. Dan, zippity doodah or zippity a?
Zippity doodah, because I guess that was the name of the song rather than just being the next song lyric.
It doesn't matter, buddy, but let me just say in the stance of you being happy, my oh my, what a wonderful day. And that's what this is, Dan.
It doesn't matter because it's going away everywhere. The last place that song survived in official Disney was Splash Mountain, and the last surviving Splash Mountain was Tokyo, and I got to go on it just in August. But even that one, I believe, is now being rebranded to Princess and the Frog. Still going to be a good ride, but it's not going to have that song.
Dan, does the Small World exhibit at Disney World, does it still have the saucers, and is there still a Small World where it's a small world? That one, does that still go on?
It does, yeah. The one in Japan is actually really cool. It's a Small World in Japan. Has all of like the Disney characters from the movies like in their respective countries. So when you go through the Scotland bit, Merida from Brave is there, and when you go through Norway, they have Small World dolls of Anna and Elsa from Frozen and stuff. So as well as just going through the different countries, you get to spot the Disney characters and stuff too, which the other ones might have that, but they didn't last time I was on them. But the Japan one does, which is really cool.
Okay. I know you know way more about Disney than Pokemon. It sounds like Lorcana's playing real strong catch up to the rest of the franchise. Dan, please or thank you?
Thank you, because I think you should. I don't know, because you should say thank you to people even when you didn't ask them to do something. If they just do something nice for you, you should say.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Dan. But you're never going to get to thank you if you don't say please first. So you might want to think about your order of priorities. Dan, coughing, wheezing, or burping?
I'm doing all three of them now. Coughing.
Okay, good. Congratulations, Dan. That was the right answer. Not really. There's no right answers or wrong answers.
No.
Dan, Sea King or Land Queen?
Sea King. We'll go with
Laura, Land Queen is for you. God bless you. Start drawing, sweetie.
There's a Nidoqueen already. That one's too close.
No, it's not. There's nothing too close. Nobody even knows what Nido means. Everybody even knows what Land Queen means. It means the queen of the land. Okay. It's like, the mermaid. You should know that because it's like a Disney thing. Dan,
How is a mermaid queen of the land? How is a mermaid queen of the land?
Because she can get rid of that tail thing if some magic happens, and she comes on land and she does her business, and then she gets back in the water when a mermaid tail goes back on. Have you not watched these movies?
Yeah, but like every other Disney princess or Disney queen is more queen of the land than Ariel because she's half the time in the sea.
Okay, you just made my argument. So I don't watch it because I don't know what Ariel is, but half her time's on land. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You made my point. Thanks, Dan. Dan, I got to move on. I don't have time for your, intellectual, stuff on this stuff. Why? There's no time for your explanations. Just move right down, Dan. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot explanations are part of the game. My bad.
I haven't slept in 4 days.
But I can't help it. If you're going to do a podcast, you need to step up for your viewers. Dan, I'm going to say it again. Abracadabra or alakazam?
Alakazam.
Hey, Rocky, want to watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat? You probably don't know what that's from. Sorry, Dan.
What was that?
That's like from Rocky and Bullwinkle, back when people were my age. Dan?
The only Rocky and Bullwinkle I saw was the really terrible movie that they made like 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
Why do you say it's terrible? Well, why would you be so negative on the movie franchise? Is it because it was animated?
No, it wasn't animated. It was live action. They just drew Rocky and Bullwinkle over the top of the live action people. And I think everyone is in agreement that was not a good movie.
All right. We're going to stop it right here. Luckily, I have no way to press a button, but if I could, I swear to God, I'd press some button. Hey, viewers, this is the public service announcement number 2. We are not going to systemically sit here and watch Dan bully the Rocky and Bullwinkle franchise because Boris Rachmaninoff, the bad guy in that stuff, made his living in that too. So all of those that know about Rocky and Bullwinkle and want to know how to pull a rabbit out of somebody's hat, it is time for you to comment and tell Dan to lay off Rocky and Bullwinkle. Okay?
I am not
that
getting
squirrel
annoyed.
Fly.
I am not saying bad things about the Rocky and Bullwinkle franchise. I am specifically saying bad things about the movie that, now that I look at it, came out 23 years ago.
Dan, when you take a shovel and bury yourself so deep, you can give someone else the shovel to unbury you, but no one's doing it, buddy. You've buried yourself, and you're going to hear in the comments that you went too far on this one. Dan, Giovanni's charisma or Dan's je ne sais quoi?
Giovanni's charisma.
At this point, watching you try to get through this video, I think everybody would have to agree with that one.
Yeah, they definitely would.
Butterfree or margarine giveaway?
Butterfree.
Sandshrew or grain mouse?
Sandshrew, but Laura's definitely going to draw Green Mouse.
Paris or Rome?
Paris. Actually, no, probably Rome. I was going to say Paris because I've been there, but other than Disneyland, I don't like Paris, so probably Rome.
This isn't Paris, it's Paris. Paras.
Yeah, but you knew what you were doing when you then asked Rome.
Doug Trio or Doug Duo?
Doug Trio, I guess.
That's not okay. I just feel like you can win with a set prejudice to go and don't do it. Dan, believable or far-fetched?
Far-fetched. Yeah, you switched them around. You put the Pokemon 1 second to see if I would notice.
I'm not afraid to give you a little dip in the road, my friend. Somebody's got to fill those potholes. Dan, travel for promos or promotional travel?
Travel for promos, because
you've been doing a lot of that lately.
No one would pay me for promotional travel. I don't have the followers to get promotional travel. I have to travel to get the promos.
Okay. All right, Dan, that's going to lead us into our highlighted cards this week, which are going to be all about the promotional cards and some of the things you've been doing for the last several weeks. All right, so let's do it. Highlighted cards.
And now for our highlighted cards of the week.
So yes, this week's highlighted cards, I guess we're going to talk about some of the promos that we have been able to add to our collections over the last few weeks. Either we have them with us now, or they're at least paid for and on their way. David, have you got anything to say on this one, or are you just waiting for me to tell you what I've spent your money on?
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So Dan said in the beginning, before we started the podcast, I'll tell you whatever we've got coming in. And I go, no, why don't we just tell the audience? Because Dan has been running around this entire world for the last 8 weeks or whatever. So I thought it'd be fun for him to at least come up with some pictures and some stories about some of the stuff he's been trying to find. These promos that seem to be coming out of everywhere. So this will be kind of a sporadic highlight cards segment. And then I think in the next videos we do podcasts, we'll get back to some more maybe central sets and other things that we want to talk about. I am going to interrupt before Dan starts. He's going to go through it and pretty much take it from there. But I am going to say, do-do-do-do. Hey, what's that noise? Oh, it's time to reveal our character and number for the giveaway this week. So the character is War Turtle, and the number is 171. War Turtle 171. Don't forget to get to my DMs. Pop that in there. Leave a comment in the video, and you will be entered in a giveaway to win something more spectacular than your dreams. Hopefully your dreams are just nightmares, because it's really not that big a deal. Okay, Dan? Highlighted cards. What do you got, buddy?
Is 171 the number of the full art War Turtle in 151?
I'm going to say yes, since I pulled it out of my 151 set.
Okay. All right. I was just wondering where that number came from, but that makes sense.
Okay.
All right, so promos that we've picked up, or I've picked up for us pretty recently. We talked about the Pokemon Together promos, which I think we talked about this 2 podcasts ago, actually, where there was the post office that's moving around Europe, and you get to go, and there's 2 different promos. There's the Pikachu, the Eevee. You get to go, you keep one, and you get to mail one to someone. You probably just mail it to yourself, so then you have both when you get home. We picked those up a couple of weeks ago. We bought them. I'm not going to say any prices, but we maybe overpaid a little bit. I think there's a lot more out there than I initially thought. Long term, I think we're fine, but in the short term, we may be slightly overpaid. But hey, those, I actually got a message from my mum today, because I was getting them shipped to my mum so she could send them all over to me, because they're obviously all copies are in the UK currently. And she said, I've only received 2 sets, still waiting on the 3rd. And then I looked, and just on the 3rd one, I hadn't bothered to change the address. I'd had it sent to me. So the 3rd one is already on its way to me. So that's where we're at with that. But we do.
Right, so before you continue, let's clarify. Since Dan just kind of glossed over that real quick. Watch where my hand is going.
Yeah.
So Dan said we overpaid. No, we didn't. We didn't do anything. Okay. Dan just calls me and says, "Hey, I'm spending this for something." And I go, "Dan, you're out of your mind." He goes, don't threaten me, David, because I swear to God, I know where you live and I'm holding all of your world championship cards for the last 12 years. What can I do?" Right. So then he overpays by 100, 200, or $500. And what am I going to do? He goes, "Send me the money." If I don't send it to him, he holds my cards hostage. I'm not happy about it either. I know all of you guys that favor Uncle Dave know what I'm going through right now. I'm done talking about him because I got something else to rant about, so I can't rant about this right now. Okay, Dan, move on. What's the next thing you picked up?
We'll just first say it wasn't that much, and you haven't paid me yet because I'm not charging you until I actually have the cards in my hand. Anyway, next one that I just picked up, actually just paid for these yesterday. So for people who know Obsidian Flames, you remember there was a couple of promos came out over here, Espeon and Umbreon. Umbreon, we got at GameStop, had a nice little GameStop logo, and then Espeon came out at Best Buy and had the Obsidian Flames set logo. Now, a lot of people know with sets, you often get a couple of different versions of the GameStop one. Australia and sometimes Canada will get EB Games versions, which they did for the Umbreon. I haven't picked those up yet. I need to speak to someone in Australia and just grab us all of the last few EB Games promos. But then occasionally, some places in Europe will get the GameStop one with just the set logo. It happened with the Lechonk. The UK got the GameStop version with the set logo. They're normally fairly easy to find, except for some reason, the Umbreon with the set logo appears to have only come out in Switzerland. So there was one floating on eBay for the longest time. They had to buy it now of multiple hundreds of dollars, which we decided not to buy. We were trying to make some contacts. But just yesterday, as I was driving home from PAX, or as Laura was driving, I wasn't doing this while I was driving, I was scrolling Facebook and saw someone on Verbank had a few of them, and I was able to get us those. Do you have any more of a recollection of what that card is now, David, now that I've explained it's the variant of the GameStop one?
No, because there's all these different ones, and I've been bidding on one too lately that's like maybe I don't know, it's something with a GameStop an EB Games logo on it from somewhere back in the UK or in Australia or whatever. So I'm just I can't wait to watch the podcast, Dan, so I can see what the picture is on the screen.
Yeah. Like I say, the EB Games ones are easier to find than this set logo one. We do still need to get the EB Games ones, but I think if I speak to some people in Australia, I can hopefully get that sorted soon-ish.
Okay. I think the ones in Australia I saw are going for about $70 each, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe plus shipping, if I'm thinking of the same one. It's got to be either for Obsidian Flames or 151. Maybe it's
probably 151 is the Charmander. The Charmander has an EB Games one.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
We haven't seen any Charmanders with just the set logo yet, so possibly that one hasn't got a European release, but we'll keep an eye out for it. But I know that EB Games does have that one.
Okay.
And then just today, I won an eBay auction. This is for a card where we're hoping to get one each for the three of us, for me, you, and Laura. This is the first one I'm getting. So this one may end up being yours, depends how much Laura fights me on it. We'll see how future auctions go. But I got an auction for this Evolving Skies League promo Pikachu. The reason this one is rare is that Evolving Skies was during the pandemic. There were no Pokemon leagues. No leagues got promos for this set. But apparently, about 6 months ago to a year ago, something like that, in Australia, one store, instead of receiving their staff promos for a pre-release, received 2 packs of this. So there's 40 copies with one store in Australia. And as far as we know, that is every copy that is out there. Now, annoyingly, we also know that there are 250,000 copies in a warehouse somewhere that Pokemon has. So we've got one of these. I've bought one of these. It could mean that none of these ever come out again, and this could be a $2,000 card in a couple of years, or Pokemon could send a load out, and this could be a $5 card in a couple of years. This is one we're just having to take the risk on and say, hey, well, we're getting it. But as I say, I've got one. We'll hopefully get some more. It seems that the people that have them that are trying to sell them are being clever about it. It seems there's never more than one live auction on eBay at once. It seems that if anyone's wanting to sell one, they're waiting till the previous auction ends so that the doesn't appear multiples. But I think I was the only. This one had quite a high starting bid, but their starting bid was around what the others sold for, and I was the only bidder. So this is another one of those ones where the levels of how niche it actually is probably putting a few people off with the higher price. It's the kind of thing where there's a pretty limited number of people who would want it at that price. I think there'd be a lot of people after it if it was a very cheap card, or if it was, I mean, even $20-$30 card. But I think with the couple of $100 price tag that's on it, there's maybe pretty limited market. But as I said, when I'm looking for two more, I'll be bidding on two more.
I think I just want to say real quick that I think I would rather have a situation where sellers are strategic about how many they throw onto the market to try to at least maintain a market value than folks that have no idea what they're doing. So this is what happened. I told you guys about the podcast deal earlier in the day, the 2022 PAX. The lowest price on that thing was, after taxes and everything, like I said, $1,200. I paid $1,300 for one of those packs maybe 6 months ago. And so I'm going out there to set up the deal for you guys, thinking I haven't seen anything less than $1,200 when you account for shipping and taxes on eBay. And all of a sudden I see these two UK folks out at one penny lower than the other, battling each other at $7.50. Well, they could have easily been at $9.99 or whatever if they'd understood that they didn't have to go, crashing the entire market. That's what they're going to do. They can do whatever they want. I don't care. Don't know how many packs they have. Don't know anything about them. So, but it's not a smart way to do business. If you're going to be out there, you typically are going to be just lower than the lowest price, because then anybody that wants to buy is going to buy from you. It isn't going to change the fact that they're going to buy for $900 versus $750. If they want it and you're the lowest price, they're going to pay $900. If they don't want it, no price is going to matter. But it is interesting when the market crashed like that, in a sense, crashed down below what it was, that it makes me have to then say, okay, my deal's got to be a lot better for you guys, because now you guys can get it at $900. So, hey, I want you to have a great savings at like $750 or something. So I'd rather have sellers that understand and leak something out over the course of time to at least help maintain a market than just completely kill it by throwing all of their stuff on the eBay system.
Yeah, the person who comes to mind the most when I think about that is back when the Art Academy contests happened back in 2013. Obviously, some of the winners didn't want to sell. So people who don't know, it was you submitted artwork on the DS game, and 12 winners. Well, I guess it was 22 winners. So it was 10 in Japan, but outside of Japan, there was a North America contest and a Europe and Oceania contest, and there's 12 winners total got 100 copies of their artwork on cards. Now, of the ones that wanted to sell, quite a lot of them just said they were trying to sell them and were selling them all as quick as they could. And generally, the price that those were going for at the time was about $100 to $200 per copy. One person that didn't do that was the winner of Mew, which was the one printed in German. That winner actually waited a couple of months before listing any, and then listed one for sale on auction. And then after that auction ended, waited another month, and then listed the next one. And even at a time where, as I say, the others were going for just a couple of $100, the Mew was pulling in high 3, low 4 figures at least every time, just because people never, there wasn't this perception of, 90 of the 100 copies are out on the market. The seller could, because the winner could have always said, okay, I've sold 2 or 3, I'm never going to sell any more. So people were obviously bidding on the low amount that were available. And I think that seller benefited hugely. I mean, obviously, every winner would have benefited if they just waited, but we had no way of knowing what the market would do in 5 or 10 years' time. But even from day one, that seller made way more than any of the other Art Academy winners.
Yeah, and we have a segment in our podcast called TCG in the News. I'm going to bring it up now. I'm not going to wait till the end to bring it up, because it ties into what you said just now. It ties into what I was saying as far as people might have more of something than they let on, which is there might all of a sudden be a couple of, 2022s out there. You talked about the the pack of promos that went to the store, maybe 40 copies to one store.
Yeah.
We don't ever know what is these days, what is behind the back door, right? And
Yeah.
it's becoming more apparent the more folks that we listen to and hear from that there seems to be a few extra copies of kind of everything. You don't want it to believe it, and you don't want to, accept it. And there's, some areas we haven't seen them. I mean, ironically, we haven't seen extra copies of the pre-release Raichus to this point, just the two. But some people believe some of the WotC employees still have some in their hands and whatever. So this week, somebody sent a post out, and this is from Instagram. The idea in Instagram, because I think if I tell you, you can go look. It's under enjoy. The name is enjoy, and also referred to, I noticed, as enjoy my night. And so the post said, "One of a kind, no more." And
I literally have this post open. I was going to talk about this in the podcast.
Okay, Dan, when I have get to it first, Dan, when I get to something first, don't claim it as your own. Let me have a small bit of credit because I have more needs than you emotionally. Because
I have it up
more tired and I'm still awake.
I have it up from the Fine card. I think Enjoy My Night may have shared it from the Fine card, but I have this one open because I wanted to talk about this.
Okay, so this person, Enjoy, posted from the Fine card, breaking news that a unique one-of-one Pokemon trophy card was listed on auction today, and it's a customized card. Dan will tell you about it in a minute. You'll see the picture, where you can discernibly see that in a one-of-one situation where it's actually been tailor-made to the winner or whatever, his picture's in it, there's not just one card, there's more than one, there's two. And so my point is, when you can get to this level of individual of accountability, what's supposed to be out there, and there's more than one card of a one of one, it'd be like saying that Magic the Ring card or something. Now they find out there's another one. Who knows? Who doesn't know? Whatever. How much do you really count on when you buy? Do you hope that nothing else is coming out? I happen to be stocking up on. I'm going back. I don't care if you buy anything from me. That's not the point. I'm not trying to sell you on 2022. I happen to collect those player promo packs all the way back from 2014. And I try to get multiple of them because I think they're going to be really good in the future. But I don't really know if somebody is not hoarding 27 packs of 2014, and I'm going to find out that all this buying I did was in vain, right? So it's just funny that the more these things are worth more money, these Pokemon cards, the more that these backdoor stuff that's been stored away sort of seems to be finding its way onto the market, which is a bit frustrating for those people who buy with an expectation that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, so this one, when David says it was a customized card, it was customized by the Pokemon Company, by TBC in Japan. This person was not a winner. It's a number 2 trainer, so they came second in a tournament. And one of their prizes was a card that actually has their picture on it. Obviously, I have the images up on the screen, but it's their photo, and I believe their name and the location of the tournament is printed onto the card. So it was obviously always believed that it was one of one, but now a second copy has come out. There's now one graded by CGC and one graded by PSA, and because it's Cosmos Foil, where Cosmos Foil just contains a random assortment of foiling, you can tell it's not the same copy. It does not have the exact same foil pattern. They're both Cosmos Foil, but no two Cosmos Foils are the same. They're a fully unique pattern, so you can tell that the stars and the circles in the Cosmos Foil are in different places, which confirms it is a second copy. Obviously, we've seen a lot of different extra copies come out over the past few years. Like, we've had those number 1 and number 2 trainers that don't have winners' names put on, so are guaranteed to be extra copies. We know that those copies never went out to winners.
Japanese.
Yeah. Yes, Japanese. It is pretty funny that you mentioned the One Ring. So, obviously, as we've talked about the One Ring, it's the card that Post Malone bought. It was the 001 of 001 serialized Magic card. So, Magic does other serialized cards. Obviously, in a lot of sets now, there's a lot of different cards you can get that are numbered out of 100. They also do some secret lair ones at events where you will get given just a cardboard thing that will say, this is the name of the card, but you don't know what serial number you have. They did it for Shivan Dragon, Giant Growth, they did this thing, they did Swords to Plowshares and others, and they were numbered out of 295, so it would have printed on the card, 001 of 295, 002 of 295, whatever. I believe that the story is correct. For Giant Growth, someone got a copy numbered 000, which is not a copy that should exist. So, I mean, potentially it was some sort of testing thing. Potentially they printed it and the 000 is something that Wizards was supposed to keep for themselves, whether they were trying to do, a master set archive or something within the building. But maybe a 000 ring exists. We don't know. It's entirely possible. But as soon as I saw that post on Instagram, I was like, yeah, we have to talk about that one. I will say, I don't know if there's documentation to say, like, I don't know if it was ever said when it was released that this would be the only copy. I think it was just, assumed that because it was a trophy card with the winner's face printed on it, that they only ever got one copy. I believe Yamato, who has one card like this with his face printed on it, he's only ever shown one copy, so I think it's just based on all of that the assumption is that there was only one copy. I don't know if the Pokemon Company ever came out and said, we are only making one copy, but it was always assumed that those photo cards only had one copy, and then here is guaranteed proof that there's another one on the market. Oh, there's two out there now, so very, very likely the second one came out the same way that we've seen these other trophies, the illustrators and stuff come out, where it's someone who either worked there or had access or something back there.
Yeah, so here's another opportunity for you guys to comment, okay? No one's going to comment. Dave, we don't have any time to comment. We barely have time to listen to the nonsense all the way through that you and Dan put in these dumb podcasts. Well, that's not my fault. That's on you. Make more time. Make a comment, okay? It's the least you can do. It's not like we're putting out wonderful content, for no reason. We're doing it for you guys. So I don't need to justify. I'm not going to get up on my soapbox right now and debate you guys. Stick a darn comment in the comment field. So here's the thing. Is it wrong if somebody comes to me and offers me a card that's backdoor and I buy it? Is that wrong or not? Okay. Is it stolen? Is it not stolen? Nobody's pursuing anybody. So you have, don't mean me, by the way, but I mean, you're not dealing with an illegality. Let's talk about last week. Nothing against Rusty. I said to Rusty, hey, will you tell us how you got the sheets? And he's like, yeah, the production manager had extra sheets and said, hey, would you like to buy this from me? Whatever, I can get you this. So there's a lot of people that have had connections through the years and have bought sheets or have bought cards. Or I think that from what Dan tells me, and I'm not sure because, Dan doesn't tell me everything, and stuff that he tells me doesn't even true. But I believe that some of the Battle Academy cards that I have in my collection that came from collector's cash, they were sold
Academy.
What?
Art Academy. Battle Academy is a different thing. Art Academy.
Guys, this is the reason I keep him around. Uncle Dave's just saying stuff. He doesn't know what he's saying. A lot of stuff spewing out. A Battle Academy is like a game board thing about $12. Okay, nobody wants that thing. I do because it has cards in it that are all brand new for me, and they got little stamps. They're cute. I need them for my collection. But and it's a great way, by the way, Battle Academy stuff for holiday gifts for your kids and stuff. Wonderful. But anyways, the Art Academy cards, a couple of them, Dan has gone so far as to tell me they were never supposed to come out. Like it's from a winner that got 100 copies and said he didn't want to sell any, but I have all 6 or 7 in my collection, the English version ones. Well, I bought it from collector's cash in wherever they have that business, Bayman. And so that means that however he got them, apparently if Dan's information is correct, it means I have a card that's not supposed to be out there, but I bought it legitimately on the market, paid a tidy sum for it. So is that okay? Am I okay? Or am I going to end up on some crazed maniac's video, which I'll talk about in my rant in a minute, because I've clearly broken the moral and ethical laws of the world by buying a card that shouldn't have been out there in the first place, that he bought from somebody that shouldn't have sold it, blah, 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 blah. I don't have any way. When I bought it, I had no idea that there was the seller had not supposedly said he was selling any cards. So what's your opinion on this? Is it luck be a lady tonight and people are lucky and have connections, or you get lucky with your purchase timing? Or is it, everybody should know that there should be a list and there should be a hobby fraud list that says, none of these cards were supposed to be issued, so don't touch them and don't buy them and blah, blah, blah. I don't know.
I will say I think that within TPCI, just from what I know from from former employees who've worked there who've been willing to share a little bit more. I'm not going to name them. I will just say, but I've spoken to former employees. There is some amount of things like that where, when they print the Art Academy cards, they likely print at least a full sheet. So they print 121, they cut it, they send 100 out. There's always a bit of leeway because of if they print exactly 100 and one comes back defected, they don't want to have to do another whole print. They give themselves a bit of leeway above what they actually have to send out. The other copies, it's not like they're being stolen. There is a little bit of, you can just have this. The company's letting you have this. Don't sell it while you still work here. It's kind of the official, unofficial line on some of that stuff. So this stuff that's coming out, it's not like it's someone breaking into sealed closets at TBCI and stealing stuff. It's kind of a company culture like that where you can be given some stuff.
Yeah, and probably, and you guys know I'm not judgmental. So some of you are going to believe that that's perfectly fine, and some people aren't. Look, do you think that I'm not jealous of Rusty and what he's been able to acquire just from being involved in 2008 with these folks years ago? I didn't acquire anything that way, but that doesn't mean, but you know, that's great for him. I mean, I can't, I'm not going to go back and say and come up with an argument why he shouldn't have what he has and those, plastic wrappers and stuff. He was fortunate to be involved at a point where that stuff was offered to him. So more power to him. But a lot of people, I guess, feel the jealousy and feel whatever else and say they shouldn't have it and it's wrong. And then you get all kinds of stuff, no different than when I'm cutting my sheets or cutting the uncut sheets to create collectibles for more than one person. And you've got some crazed maniac out there saying you shouldn't be doing that. So, but I don't have a problem with people feeling an uncut should be held as historical, whatever. That's their prerogative with the sheets they have. I just don't think you should judge other people for doing what they want. And especially when we're transparent about what we're doing as well. So
I will say for WotC, at least Wizards of the Coast, a lot of even current employees of WotC have said back in the day, things like test prints and miscuts and errors and stuff like that, or production error cards, they weren't these super high figure sales that they are now. They were kind of just like a curiosity. WotC literally used to have just a table in their reception area where if someone in one team didn't want something, they'd just put it on the table. And if someone wanted it, they could take it. This included things like, let's say, test print Magic cards from early expansions where they would have official printed out like WotC stickers that they'd put on cards to try them out. And now some of those cards are nowadays selling for thousands of dollars. But WotC would literally just be an actual giveaway table that people would dump stuff on if whichever game they were working on had stuff they didn't need and anyone wanted it, they could have it. I know they don't have that table now because of the fact that this stuff is so valuable and it's a lot more difficult for the company to say, we'll put this out and you can take it when they know it could be thousands of dollars compared to they genuinely think it's worthless. But
and
yeah, that's how a lot of Magic stuff came out.
Right. And would it change your opinion, Dan, if somebody came, so to any of our viewers, if you think, gosh, I just don't know anybody that could possibly have that extra stuff that they might offer to me. What if one of those people came out of the woodwork and they're holding 100 test sheets and these things are getting more and more valuable. So they start to put them on the market and somebody happens to tell a friend and you're like, hey, if you find anything interesting, and this person comes out and offers you a test sheet and it's not 100,000 or it's 50,000, it's 10,000, it's 5,000, it's $500. Would you buy it? That's the key. To me, it'd be whether or not you'd still buy it or regardless, because you now have access to something that was offered to you. Or would you say, no, I would never touch that. That's a test sheet. I could, that's not a real cards or whatever. So, and then that also gets down to what you collect, right? So Dan just mentioned, I didn't know about this until this week. There was one of our folks who follows us or whatever. I'm sorry, I don't know your name right now. My total apologies. But he contacted me and he said, Dave, I have an opportunity at my local card shop to maybe buy these cards. And I think they're a Neo test version that actually had the yellow backs with stickers on the front. And the stickers were kind of facsimiles of what the card was supposed to look like based on HP and maybe everything but the drawing. It's just like an informational sticker. And for me, because the stickers weren't part of the actual card, they weren't, printed onto the card, it just didn't fit what I was looking for, although they're probably worth some decent money. So again, you get down into what is interesting and what's valuable and what not from a financial position, but what's valuable, what resonates for you to have in your own personal collection. So I just, again, I think, remember, formulate your own opinions, and I'm okay with whatever it is, as long as you've considered both sides and come up with whatever it is you came up with. So,
Yeah. There's one last little set of cards I want to talk about, since we're talking about stuff like unreleased and things like that. So, Dave, you know how promo sets work, where they get numbered and they'll reset the numbering system at the end of every era, and they'll just keep continually adding cards to it. So they do the same thing in Japan. With the Japanese sets, the black and white set of promos was basically uncompletable for a large amount of time, because there were 7 cards that were never released. There was just a gap of 7 cards in the numbering system due to the tsunamis that happened in Japan back in 2011. So these 7 cards were associated with the World Championship qualifiers for 2011, but due to the tsunamis, all of those events were cancelled. And it's why Japan only had 2 players in Masters at Worlds 2011. It was Yuta was the reigning champion, so got his automatic invite, and Yamato got in through the last chance qualifier. So the cards, there was a Drudigan and an Emolga, which had been advertised leading up to it. They were supposed to be the players' promos. If you went to the event, you just got those for playing. So those were heavily shown leading up to the event, so everyone knew about those. Of the other 5, 4 of them were energy cards, which were shown in like a Japanese database. People found those a little while after the fact. There was one that was always not known about until just a couple of years ago, when people mined another database. It was a special version of Pokemon Catcher. There'd been some speculation. I thought myself it was going to be a trophy card level card, because this followed on from the Platinum and the HCSS era, where the qualifier trophy card was numbered within the set, but it turns out that the trophy cards would have been unnumbered. But the main thing is, this week, CGC have graded a set of these 7 cards. So for the first time ever, these 7 cards are now available. A set has been found. Someone, assumedly behind the scenes, because these tournaments never happened. There was not a single one of these events happened, and like I said, the whole country of Japan was in turmoil when these were happening. But someone, somewhere, a set has come out, has been leaked, and for the first time ever, that promo set is now actually completable.
Dan, are those Japanese or English cards?
Japanese, don't worry about them. I'm
Okay.
saying it because it's interesting. We don't have to worry about buying it for you.
No, that's fine. And it's no surprise to me, Dan, that CGC would choose to grade them. I mean,
Yeah.
we all know that CGC will grade anything. CGC, okay, I'm just teasing, guys. I just like that. I'm kidding.
You know what? I actually heard it. I heard on my local groups that the pre-release Raichu, the entire concept of the pre-release Raichu and everything up to CGC grading them was just CGC deflecting from the fact that they had accidentally graded those hand-cut cards, which CGC never denied. They put out a statement about it, but I mean, congrats to CGC on that, because they planted that seed early. They allegedly, by what some people have told me on local Facebook groups, CGC must have planted a pre-release Raichu story in the year 2000 in order to cover up something for a company that CGC cards didn't even exist until like 2021 or something. But hey, CGC went all out and they planted that story. It's hilarious.
And most people don't know. I actually know. I know everybody at CGC. I have part ownership in the company, and I'm my second cousin's wife's brother is the head of the whole thing. Okay, and then in grading, I know 3/4 of the personnel. I'm on a first name basis, but no one gives me their telephone numbers. But CGC was behind the first Willy Wonka movie, not the new one that's coming out, where that guy would go around in the alleys and try to convince someone to buy his gobstopper thing. because he was trying to test the loyalty of the kids. That was CGC's guy back then, because they had to make sure that people were loyal, and if they weren't, they would come after you. CGC's actually, people don't know this. If you watch the old movies, CGC's beginning came with the mafia. Those guns and Al Capone and stuff were actually descendants of CGC employees right now.
Yeah. When they opened that vault of Al Capone's, they said it was empty, but it was really full of CGC cards.
God, that's good, Dan. I like that one a lot. I love that one a lot. Okay, we're going on and having fun, and that's what this is supposed to be. So,
yeah.
So Dan, thank you for all the promo stuff. We got a ton more promo stuff coming. Most of it's in Dan's vaults at his house, so there'll be more cards and.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of. Look, this is stuff with this is prize pack stuff. I'm in the middle of sorting all my prize pack stuff now that we've got those. I know I've said I've been doing it, but it has been a while. I've split all of the checklists down, so I know what's overlapping, so I know what's exclusive to each set and what's overlap between two sets, and that's what I'm working on. I'm sorting all those, and then I'm going to be trying to buy stuff to fill in that stuff. I picked up a couple of prize pack promos this weekend, actually got a VMAX or two, but yeah, that's the other thing I'm working on, and I should have you some binders and stuff sorted for that pretty soon.
Okay, good. We'll talk about that on a subsequent podcast, because I bought a lot of, not a lot, but I have some Series 1, 2, and 3 sealed packs to try to put stuff together. I've bought some common sets from people, as well as a few of the higher end cards to start to put something together too. So all right.
Well, you should definitely let me know. You should definitely let me know which higher end cards you've already bought, so that I don't buy you another copy.
Yes. Yeah. No sweat.
Yeah. Off the podcast, you can let me know that.
Yeah, pretty much. Apparently, people realize we don't talk except for on the podcast, and that's sad, Dan. We should have a better friendship after this much time. It's been like 8 months of podcasting, and I don't even know if you have a middle name. Dan, do you have a middle name?
Nope, I don't have a middle name.
Dan, I want to tell you something, okay? I don't have one either. All right. That's the truth. I really don't. My parents fought about it. My mom was mad at my dad for not giving me a middle name, but my dad didn't have one, and he didn't want he wanted to follow in the tradition.
I think in the UK it's a lot more common to not have a middle name. Like, I know over here it seems like the vast majority of people in the US have middle names, but in the UK I think it's a minority of people who have middle names.
And wouldn't you say that in the UK, Yorkshire pudding is a much more common dish as well, Dan?
Yeah, because you cannot get it over here basically anywhere.
Okay, and Dan, what about haggis?
That's popular in Scotland.
All right, Dan. I don't know the difference between UK and Scotland. I can't even tell you what the L is before a letter, before a number, when it's like Euro or GBP.
Yeah, that's GBP, the curly thing. But okay. Scotland is part of the UK. It's not part of England, but Scotland is part of the UK.
Okay, great. That's really helpful.
Should we move on? Because we're still in
highlight. So I can learn something other than just Pokemon baloney. Dan, I'd like to do a small, very short, and very informal and calm rant. Could I do a rant real quick?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, good. David has a rant coming on.
All right, so this section is David's rant, and then after this, it's look what I found. And I hadn't actually picked anything out yet, so I'm going to take my headphones off. David can do his rant, and I'll go find a card to show you in a minute. Go ahead, David.
Thanks, Dan. My rant's going to be really short, guys, today. Because it's not even really a rant. It's just, I thought I'd tell you a quick story. So I woke up this morning. You ever just wake up? And the good thing is I did wake up, because that's important. But I was really cozy in the covers. I kind of slept, really solidly. And that doesn't always happen. So I woke up kind of tired, but refreshed. And so my wife will come in the morning, because I'm like, honey, come in and try to smack me in the head to see if you can get me out of bed or whatever. So she comes in, and my wife, as you all know, is Greek. And so the first thing out of her mouth is, and I did this, what did I debated? Yeah, myself, if I was going to talk about this or not today, but it's just fun to talk about. So why not? So my wife says, did you know Rattle's at it again? I go, what? And she's like, yeah, he put another video out. And so she starts telling me about all this stuff. And inside the video, he called me an effing clown. Okay. So here's what I just thought I would say to you guys today. It's so funny. So a couple of lessons in life that you might want to be aware of. Number one, a good friend of mine once said to me that hurt people hurt people. When somebody is really messed up, when they have problems, they don't know how to deal with that. They don't have anyone to talk to. They don't have a good support system. And so you guys know my reputation. everybody knows me. If you're watching our podcast, it's impeccable. There's nothing anybody can come to me and complain about. If you can want to complain that I cut an uncut sheet because I told everybody what I did and what I was going to do, then you're allowed to be angry that I hurt the sheet. But you really shouldn't be able to be angry at me because I didn't do anything without saying it and telling it and being transparent. And which is how I live my life, full accountability for what I do and transparency. With that, you don't ever have to be hiding anything. You can just tell the truth. So there's this maniac out there, and that's his name. And I don't want you to watch his videos. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just saying he continues to attack and attack and attack. He has virtually no information and he doesn't understand, what he's getting himself into, but he just does it. So, and we talked about this 1,000 times. I'm not going to rehash it, but it's all for views. And so what I want you to realize is, can you imagine if Dan and I were on this podcast and every single week that you turned in to watch, you didn't even turn in to watch, you might turn in your bed and then watch and then turn in, or you actually tuned in to watch, that's up to you, I don't really care. And you saw me and Dan say the same thing over and over. It was the same thing. Hello, guys. Hey, I wish I could do the Groundhog Day beginning, it's 6 a.m. and Pawtucket, Pawtuxet or whatever that is. And the person the little guy saw a shadow in the groundhog. There's something where Rusty said in a comment a few weeks ago, is it like we like the drama too? Do the guys like the drama, whatever? Well, I suppose so. But here's the difference. And my wife said this morning, she goes, boy, it is like a soap opera. And I said, honey, it's not a soap opera. Because a soap opera, what happens is there's writers and there's a progression to the story. It's not rehashing of the same thing over and over again because somebody got his feelings hurt because Uncle Dave wouldn't answer questions that he wanted to ask me about a trip I was taking to go to cut a test sheet. So no, I didn't play. And what I get to do? It's so interesting. You guys will like this. Have you ever stood by a friend? I'm standing by a friend. I have a great friend in the hobby. I don't care the way that Ratto portrays him. He has no other choice. He has no other choice than to purposely and systemically try to destroy people's lives. That's what he does. But I don't need to do that. I'm going to stick by my friend because I know the benefits and the insides and the character of my friend. And it bothers him to no end that, one, he can't get me to change that support. And two is he can't find any dirt on me. There'll be pictures of me out there more and more because every time I say his name, the vendetta, the vengeful nature of somebody who's absolutely crazed to hurt people, he's going to do something to try to get to me. And the end of my story today on my rant is I laid in that bed, my wife's sitting next to me, and I said, honey, I don't care what that troll has to say. He can't get to me. I have the most wonderful life, the most wonderful wife, the most wonderful family, a great job, a sensational Pokemon card collection, everything that he's jealous of. And he's got a few more views. Okay, that's great. You can have a few more views. That's fine. More power to you. But I do hope for his own sake that he can find a way to get some help and figure out a way to maybe take a look inside and reflect on that life is a funny thing and the negativity you put out eventually comes back to haunt you. So if any of you feel like you're hurting and anything's wrong, you always have my offer. Jump into my DMs. I'm serious at this point. Let me help you through whatever so you don't take out any of that on anyone else and you get the necessary help and friendship and anything you need. I'm always going to be there to do that in any way that I can. There is a small charge you'll have to pay, which I'm sorry. Just basically for materials that I do to produce all of my positive type of quotes and quotations. There's no charge. I don't charge any money, but you will have to come to my Patreon. There's a small charge. I don't have a Patreon. Do I got to go through this every time for you guys? None of you listen to a thing I say. You're all like, it's just Dave droning on again. Listen, what's for dessert, honey? Don't have dessert when I'm in the middle of something important like this. Okay, I'm done with my rant. Now I've really ranted. Now I'm not going to I'm done. We got to go. It's an hour and 32 minutes on this thing. I don't have the thing is I'm lonely. I just want to talk to a few of you guys. Can't you guys ever can we just talk? Can are any of you just going to, send me something out on Stephen Kassoon and say, hey, I want to talk to you? Catch 'em all collectibles. You have a great name, but are you actually doing anything to help me catch them all, my collectibles? I don't know. I really don't know. And your average player, I haven't said his name once on this podcast. He's the only one of you that I actually saw, commented on a Rattle video, and has been in ours, one of my favorite guys for a long time. All right? He knows. You don't think your average player is more than an average player? He knows. He watches Rattle just to see what the guy's wearing. He doesn't worry about what he says about Uncle Dave. Okay? I'm done because I want to be done. I just want to be done right now on that, okay? Dan? I don't know what happened to the guy. He just disappeared. He decided to get another cough drop. Can we get moving on, Dan? I've been done for 10 minutes.
Have you now?
Oh, yes, I have now.
I don't know if you saw.
What I found?
I'm ready to look what I found. I did a pack opening. Someone said they needed more pack openings on this channel. Don't know if you saw. I did a pack opening of Lorcana while you were ranting. So that's something for you to look at. All right, should we do look what I found?
Yeah, we should, now that you interrupted my segment and nobody's going to know what the hell I was saying. That's great.
What cards have our hosts found today?
I found a card this week. Dan's going to put it up on the screen. And it's just a beautiful card. It's from my 151 set, and it's a Genghis Khan EX. Genghis Khan EX. A lot of letters are silent in that. It's got a 230 HP. And I liked it because, by the way, the card's 190 of 165. It has such a shine. If Dan puts one in that doesn't have a shiny, bright extension of lights coming out of this thing, then he's not giving you the right picture. He needs to show you the brightness and the colors and the rainbowic nature, that's not a word, of this card. And inside this Genghis Khan, there's a little guy coming out of his kangaroo-like tummy. It's so cute. God, it's cute. Okay, I don't know what that little guy's called, but it's like a mini-me Genghis Khan. And David, why did you just pick that card? Well, number one, it's just so darn cute. Number two, it's beautiful. And number three, its 100 times attack is incessant punching. Incessant punching. So I have another story, and I'm going to be done with it in 1 minute. It was fourth grade. I was in fourth grade. I was in the fifth grade, fourth grade spelling bee at the elementary school. I was the final fourth grader, still standing up there, all powerful with the fifth graders, and they threw the word at me incessantly. And from that point on, I was incessantly never to win another spelling bee. I went out and I fell like a log coming down the snow plow of hell. I shouldn't say that word, of heck. My apologies. Dan, bleep that out when you get a chance. Sorry, Rusty. Okay? Incessant punching, and that's it. So that's what it was. It brought back good memories, bad memories. This card told a story of my life, but I did go from losing to have a cute little babies in my pouch, about 8 of them over the course of time. And that's my story about my card.
It's Kangas Khan.
No, it's not. It's not. I knew you were going to do that. I knew that. I'm going to call it Genghis Khan. Why can't I call it Genghis Khan? Because I don't see a G. Maybe the K is silent. A G just magically pops in. Okay, I have every pronunciation wrong of every Pokemon card. And you guys know I know less about my collection than anybody else that's got a collection like mine. So it's not surprising I would mispronounce it. Let me get it right for Dan so he doesn't have to bleep me out. Hey, it's a Genghis Khan. A Genghis Khan, which sounds like kangaroo, which is why he's got a little
You even said it's got a kangaroo-like pouch. Kangas Khan, like a kangaroo.
Yeah. I didn't put 2 and 2 together until you told it to me just now. It looked like a kangaroo, but I didn't. The baby looks like a kangaroo. The character doesn't look like a kangaroo. What kangaroo has its toenails pedicured? Well, I don't get it. I don't understand.
Yeah, it's vaguely based on a kangaroo because it's got a little pouch. Interestingly, I don't know if you know in the games, obviously some Pokemon have Mega Evolutions that they can do. For Kangaskhan, basically the only change in its Mega Evolution form is that the baby gets out of the pouch and stands next to it.
Well, that's cute. I mean, it's definitely cute. I don't know anything about Mega anything. I don't want to get into it right now. I can't. My lawyer says I can't talk about Mega anything. So no, we're just going to skip right over that. Dan, what'd you find? Did you find a card while you were interrupting my segment?
I did. I went through my binder here, and my binder actually haven't emptied out the stuff that we bought in England yet because I'm really lazy and I have a lot of other stuff to organize. And since we've been talking about, League promos and we talked about that Pikachu and stuff, I thought I'd mention the Rebel Clash League promos, which was something I had to order and then I picked up from my mom when I was in England. 3 Rebel Clash League promos were Flapple, Colossal, and Twin Energy. And the reason I'd order these with my mum is that Rebel Clash was the set that had basically just come out when they did stop leagues for the pandemic. So a lot of leagues didn't actually get their shipments of Rebel Clash promos, but a lot of the ones in Europe did, and I think most of the ones in the US didn't. So these are ones that we didn't get at our league and had ended up just not picking up for a long time. But finally, before I was going to England, I made sure to order them, get them shipped to my mum's house, and I picked them up while I was there.
That's very good. And you're going to show pictures, I'm sure, and you're going to tell me
Always.
later that hopefully I own these 3, but I'm still waiting like a score bunny. Am I correct?
I hope you do own these 3, yeah. If you don't, if you check your binder, or if I check your binder when I come over and you're missing these 3, it's easy enough to get these ones.
No, I don't have these. I thought these were so obviously the battle raids are not the Rebel Clash and stuff. I have a whole thing wrong, I guess. I don't know what I own, Dan. Thanks for confusing me.
Rebel Clash is the name of a set, so you
I know
might
that.
have
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you might have these already.
Rebel Clash set?
Yeah, you might have these already from the Rebel Clash set.
That'd be surprising, Dan. Pretty much, I'm like a lagging indicator of a poor collection that's struggling to maintain its animosity in a world of difficult political choices. I don't know what.
Well, when you see the photos, when you watch this back after I've edited it, you can have a look and see if you do own them, and if you don't, we can get you a set.
All right, Dan. Thank you for that, buddy. Thanks for dangling a carrot and then giving me some false hope. Dan, what's the deal with mum and mom? Can we talk about that for a minute? Because I don't know. So, your mom is a mom. My mom is a mom. Laura's mom is a mom, and then Maddie's mom is a mom. What is the deal with that? Is it disrespectful? Why did they have to be different? Why can't your mom just be a mom? And did it come from mummy? Did it come from some kind of wrapping of paper around her when she was, an Egyptian sphinx years ago? What's going on with that?
I mean, technically, where I come from, it would be mam with an M. M-A-M, it would be, is how you would say it in...
Wait a minute.
Northeast.
Ma'am?
Yeah.
Like, ma'am, like, thank you, ma'am, M-A-apostrophe-A-M, ma'am?
No, just M-A-M. That's how you would say it in the Northeast, but I've lost a lot of my Northeast accent from being over here, and I guess I didn't have too much of a thick accent to begin with. When I'm actually talking to my family, my accent comes through a lot more. But yeah, in the Northeast, you would say ma'am, but generally I say mum when I'm talking because, I don't know, it weirds a lot of people out when you say ma'am. But mum and mom, I don't know, it's regional variations between the UK and the US. There's a lot of other words that change.
I just think it's real juvenile, Dan. I think it's mum makes you sound like you're 4 to 6 years old. Ma'am, maybe 6 to 15, and then 15 and above, it should be mom, don't you think?
No, I don't.
Well, good. I'm glad. I didn't expect you to agree. You UK folks are so stubborn in your traditions, and that's why they don't call your clock Big Benjamin. This is why in our country it'd be Big Benjamin or Lady Liberty. There it's basically Big Ben, right? It's less formal, right?
The clock isn't called Big Ben. The bell inside the tower is called Big Ben.
Wait, what's called Big Ben?
The bell. It's the bell that's inside the tower is called Big Ben, not the clock.
What's the clock called?
I don't even know what the clock is called. Let me have a look. I think it's Saint Someone's Tower is the name of the actual tower it's in, but I don't think that the actual clock face has a name. Oh, it's the Elizabeth Tower.
What?
It's the Elizabeth Tower. The clock is called the Great Clock, and the bell is Big Ben. People will generally refer to the whole thing as Big Ben, but technically Big Ben is the bell.
Okay, just be careful, Dan, because when you do go on trial one day, the more that you say, the more you open the door to get cross-examined on some of these things that you may not know every answer to. So just be careful. You're doing a great job, though, buddy.
That's why
Historically, I've learned more about the UK in the last 6 months than I know even about the USA.
Yeah. All right, well, that was somehow the Look What I Found section. Should we move on to a little bit of TCG in the news?
Yes. Let's move on because I've already done my TCG in the news with the TCG in the news. I guess it's a religious thing. TCG in the news with respect to sure. Let's move on.
Any Pokemon in the news lately?
All right, couple of quick news items. I mean, the main one is that we have had the announcement of the next special shiny set, which is out in Japanese now, is going to be coming out in English in January. I'm going to go straight to say I don't like it, because it's similar to Shining Fates and Hidden Fates, which I liked when they came out, but then we got Galarian Gallery and Crown Zenith, and that was just so much better. But now we're back to just a set of mainly just color-shifted shinies. There are some nice alt arts and stuff in it, but yeah, that's been announced. I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about it when it actually comes out in English, and we can talk about the cards. Other thing is about another card that David doesn't need to care about. They're actually releasing an exclusive artwork Pikachu in Taipei, because there is a Taipei Pokemon Center opening. So there is a special Pikachu promo card that you can get by going to that Pokemon Center in, I think, the first week or so of it opening. I think most of the Japanese Pokemon Centers did that. They'd have a special Pikachu art of Pikachu in that city. So it's cool that Taipei's getting one. So if you're out there, make sure to go to the Pokemon Center. And if you're not, I'm sure there will be some amount available online, whether there are plenty available or not. It's very cool artwork, at least. Yeah, that's about it. I'm trying to rush through it because we're so deep into this podcast. But that's a couple of very short news items. David, do you have anything you want to finish this podcast off with? Do you have any sort of game, or are we just going straight into the goodbyes?
No, absolutely not. I think that trying to do anything with you any more than I put you through today would just be corporal punishment. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your integrity. I appreciate you just staying awake. I will say I've got to do more reels. If Dan's not going to do reels, or I've got to do some short stuff maybe on my Pokemon channel. So who of you out there is close enough, is able to help Uncle Dave start to be disciplined in putting a little more content out of the. So as you guys know, I've got multiple personalities inside of myself, and I'm proud of it. I'm really proud of it. For those of you that are going to put out a video on me later. So get to know my multiple personalities, and let's cater to each one, and let's get some content out there. Okay. Who wants to help? Shadowless Jack's got too many little babies. Can't help it all. Maddie's in the UK. Stephen Kassoon is in another country somewhere. These people are all wonderful people, but someone else has got to be my helper. All right. So step up, help me, help Dan with some short reels or whatever. Friends help friends. That's what we do. And thank you for all your positivity, for all your support. Glad to be with you again this week, and can't wait to see what the next weeks bring.
I'm sure once I learn how to do reels and I get it figured out, I'll be able to pump them out fairly quickly, but it's just the learning takes a while. Anyway, yeah, thanks all for listening. I'm so, like I said, I haven't properly slept in 4 or 5 days, and they tried to take a load of my blood today and didn't work. So that's where I'm at. That's where my head's at. But hopefully we still made some sense. Hopefully we talked about some interesting things. Be sure to check out all of our links in the description. Follow us on all the socials and whatever. Check out More Than Never, the band that does all of our music for free for us. They don't do it for us. They let us use their music for free. And we'll be back next week. It might just be me and David. Maybe we'll have a guest. Who knows? Be sure to leave some comments. Either way, we'll get on to some stuff. Oh, God, I can't even talk anymore. Thanks again. We love you all. Any last words, David?
Bye-bye.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to Koffee Talks with Dan Norton and David Person, featuring music by More Than Never and artwork by Laura Norton. A special shout out to all of our Patreon members. Join us again next time.
But they don't want you to.